everyone and welcome back to the Osteophysio YouTube channel. Today we're going to be looking at the best exercises to help with sternocostal joint pain and costochondral joint pain. When our clients come into clinic presenting with pain over these two joints, there's normally very specific triggers that we see. So if the ribs are suddenly becoming inflamed or very tender around here, it might be due to repetitive abnormal postures. So for example, if someone's spending hours on end compressed in this position over their computer, or anything physical where they're having to lift the arm forward or put pressure through the ribs, after a while this can cause tightness and tenderness to potentially form over these two joints. Or someone in their past history, when we're talking through how it's come on, might have had a traumatic onset into here. So if anyone's had any trauma over the sternal bone, the sternum itself, so for example in a car crash with a seatbelt injury where it's gone pressure through here, or they've had any kind of trauma into the front of the chest, sometimes this can trigger pain and inflammation over these joints. So it's really important to understand how and when the pain came on over this area. So to differentiate the two, between the two different joints and pain over the different joints, it's normally based on location. So sternocostal joints, very close to the sternum. It's as the rib comes in and attaches into the sternum, and then the costochondral joint is slightly outwards, so a little bit more kind of outwards compared to the other. You can get the two coming on together, because obviously you think if you've impacted the whole rib, sometimes it can be localized over both, but more commonly people will be pushing over an area. They might be bracing over the ribs to help with the pain, because anytime we are breathing or coughing, or sometimes even speaking if it's really tender, or reaching up through the arm, or twisting through the torso, so through the body, you're activating through the rib cage. So if it's really tender over these points of inflammation, it's going to make it worse, and normally it's better when you're resting and obviously not using the ribs in such an exaggerated manner. So the first thing that we normally recommend when thinking about exercises to relieve pain around here is removing any, or trying to reduce the amount of inflammation over these joints. So this can be done by adding ice to the area for about 2 to 5 minutes directly over the joints themselves. What we then want to start to add in is relieving tightness around. So when something gets tight or inflamed in the body, it's really common for the body to compensate and guard and potentially compress around this area. What we'd want to look at is general massage initially. So if the pain's in rib 3 or 4 around this area, we want to start by doing circular motion across the chest muscles. So we're going that way, and you'll feel it will feel quite soft, so you almost want to go between the ribs, because if we can relieve the intercostals and then massaging over the pectoral muscles, this can help to get blood flow to the area to help with recovery. What we then might find is certain points that are particularly tender in between the ribs, so we then want to trigger point release into the intercostal muscles, and I do this by holding. You want to add the pressure until it's about an 8 out of 10, hold it still until you feel that drop, and then moving out again a little bit more lateral. So you're then going to find a point that's really tender, adding that pressure, holding that still until you feel it relax down, and then relaxing there. Next, before we even try and move the thoracic spine, the ribs or the neck to relax around this area, we want to try and encourage controlled breathing. So the breathing should be done in 2 parts. So in part 1, as we breathe in, we're pushing the tummy out initially, and then we want to lift up through the ribs. So we're opening up through, and then as we breathe out, everything's dropping down and we're pulling the tummy in tight. So if I repeat that again, we want to do this for about 2 to 5 times through, so really gaining that control and seeing how it feels. As we breathe in, we're pushing the tummy out and then lifting up through the ribs, and then as you breathe out, imagine everything's compressing down, so we're compressing down through the body. So lovely and controlled breathing before we try and do any kind of movement. Next, we want to start to gently open up through the front of the rib cage. So I always do it in 2 parts. So I want to start off with a smaller range of motion. You can even pop your hand over your sternum and you can feel this stretch and the movement through the ribs. So only move on to this exercise if you've added the ice and you've done the breathing and it feels relatively comfortable, it's not too sharp, and obviously you've had this diagnosed beforehand. So you're going to place either your hand on your shoulder or resting there. I normally like to leave it here. This hand's over the sternum, and then what you want to do is very gently, so you can start off with a really small range and then widening that range over time, because what you'll feel with this hand is as you bring the arm back, you can feel it almost widening, stretching through this area. So we're not forcing a big stretch yet, but we're trying to get some movement in. So I would normally aim between, I would say, 30 circles going backwards, or you can do it for time for about a couple of minutes. You're just gently opening up through. And then we're just opening up through the area. So before we do any kind of stretch, what I would do in click, and you can try this if you want to, it's a bit like kind of doing this, trying to tap the head and rub the tummy, is if you feel a point of tenderness, you can hold it with the other hand and then bring your shoulder back. So you're almost stretching. So this is what we would aim to do via treatment, is trying to open up through the ribs. So you can do this with your hand and release in between as you're bringing the shoulder back, or, which is I'm expecting most of us to do, is just bring the shoulder back to here. If that's feeling comfortable, you can then bring the hand into a straight arm and then bring it back a little bit more, because you might feel this click or a little bit of grinding as you're opening up through. And obviously make sure that your shoulder can handle this, because sometimes with rib pain we've got shoulders involved as well. We want to gently bring that back. So again, for about 30 seconds, stretching back through the arm and opening up into the front of the ribs. Next, we want to aim to stretch or add a deeper stretch through the pectoral muscles. So to demonstrate, so you can see where my hand is. So imagine I'm pushing against a wall here, or a door frame, whatever's easy and whatever you have available in your house. So you're going to fix the hand here, so you can either have the arm out straight, and it has to be in line with the shoulder. This is absolutely key. Or you can bend it up at 90 degrees and you can stretch that way, whatever feels easier. I typically tend to do a straight arm. What you can do is you're going to keep the arm where it is. So imagine it's pushing against something, and then as you turn the head away, you're going to stretch and turn the body away. So you want to aim to hold this for about 30 seconds. You'll feel it stretching right across from the shoulder all the way towards the sternum, and you want to hold that for about 30 seconds. So you're going to relax there, holding that position, and then when you get to the end of the 30 seconds, imagine you're pushing against the wall here, you're feeling the stretch here, you're going to gently bring the body back. That's absolutely key. Lovely, nice, slow and controlled. I would always repeat it on the opposite side just to balance through both sides of the rib cage, but obviously the main side that you're aiming for is the side of tenderness. What we next want to look at is adding a little bit more control through the shoulders. So think about if your trigger is your body dropping forward and that repetitive posture of pressure around the front causing that compaction and inflammation, you want to do everything you can to bring the shoulders back. So what we can do is pop our hands into our sides, making sure our shoulders are relaxed, and what we're going to aim to do is pinch the shoulders together, hold for a couple of seconds and then relax. So what you're doing is you're moving and stretching around the front, obviously indirectly, but what we're actually aiming to do is strengthen the muscles around the back of the shoulder blades in order to bring the shoulder blades together and open up and keep us in more of an upright posture. So you want to hold for about 2 to 5 seconds, pinching those shoulder blades together and then relaxing. And here we're aiming between 10 to 15 reps with this particular movement. And then if I show you from the side, arms into your side, you're going to pinch the shoulders together. So you're not going to lift up, it's directly back, holding for a couple of seconds and then back, and then once more you're pinching them together, holding between 2 to 5 seconds and then relaxing. With all our videos on our YouTube channel, we always recommend going and getting the area assessed first, because we actually find that the exercises that we have developed and that we've prescribed in our routines are so much more effective if you know what is going on in that particular area. So what we typically find with sternocostal costochondral joint pain, if it's quite a straightforward repetitive pattern that's caused that inflammation, we find typically between 6 to 8 weeks to help it calm down and obviously get it moving better. The prognosis obviously significantly better if you've added ways to reduce that inflammation, get the body moving, maybe had some hands-on treatment, had the rest of the body assessed to make sure that it's not compensating for the original pain, but also that you're avoiding any aggravating factors, which again we completely understand is actually quite a challenge to do, particularly if your aggravating factors are when you're working. So it's being able to adapt all variables that might be impacting your injury in order to help with the prognosis long term.